Hey, what's going on? This is the Body Punch Podcast, and my name is Naz. Let's take a look at UFC Fight Night, Chiesa versus Magny. This one's happening Wednesday, January 20th, which is an interesting date, but I don't think it's going to make a difference for these two fighters. Now, this fight is not for any title implications, but it's actually to find out where these two stack up in the division. The 170-pound division being the almost Shark Tank that it is, I wouldn't classify it as being the best division in the UFC, but it's one of the most competitive. Chiesa ranked number 8 and Magny ranked number 9 will give us a really good and fun fight to start off the week where Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier will fight each other. So it's a great teaser for the amazing card that's coming up. And it's a great way to really get us excited. We just had that amazing Max Holloway fight where he had a masterclass against Kattar. He showed up and did something amazing with the amount of output that he has. Now, bringing up output, these two fighters are known to have output, but in two different ways. Magny, known more for his striking output, and Chiesa, known for taking people down and hitting them with submissions. But let's talk about the overall card before we delve into this fight. Now, in my notes, I wanted to point out some of the more interesting fights to take a look at on this fight night card. Because I think a lot of people are going to watch this either out of, just trying to find something random on TV, or you're a really hardcore fan. But you might not know that some of these fights on this card are still really interesting and have some really fun fighters on there. Obviously, all due respect to everybody on this card, but some of the fights I wanted to pinpoint were the Roxanne Modafferi fight. She's always fun to watch, and especially with her experience and talent and being in MMA for so long, and also competing for that nicest fighter award. You always want to see her fight. You always want to see what she's up to, and if she's going to do anything interesting, which she always does. One of her last fights was a big upset win for her, and it was really great to see someone so nice get a win like that. Another fighter I wanted to mention was Ricky Simon. He's fighting on the card, and also Omari Akhmedov. He's going to be fighting on the card. We all know him from his last fight against Chris Weidman, where Weidman won that one, but it was a very competitive fight. Very competitive. Some people actually thought that Akhmedov won that fight, but he's fighting this Wednesday. I was about to say this weekend, but he's fighting this Wednesday. And like I said, very competitive fight with Chris Weidman. And he showed a lot of great things in there. And he also showed an evolution in his game. So I just wanted to point out those fights for this fight night card. So let's take a look at the main event, where Michael Chiesa and Neil Magny are going at it. Now let's take a look at their past fights and their record. So let's go with Michael Chiesa first. Michael Chiesa is 16-4, and he's 33 years old. And like I said before, ranked number 8. Now, the interesting part about Michael Chiesa is that he looks like someone that's fresh and new in the game, but he's been fighting for a long time. I'm not saying at the age of 33 that he's an old timer or anything, but I think that even myself included, we forget how long he's been fighting in MMA. So his last fight, which was January 25th, 2020, was a unanimous decision win against Dos Anjos. Now, that's a great name to get a win over. He's a tough competitor, and we all know that about Dos Anjos. And to get a unanimous decision win over him was a big deal. The fight before that was the Diego Sanchez win, which was in July 6, 2019, also a unanimous decision win. Diego Sanchez being a little bit long in the tooth, but still a great win for Chiesa. And with this unanimous decision win, we're going to see a little bit of a repetition, or we're going to see a character trait. Actually, we're going to see more of like a character trait, or the style that Chiesa likes to fight throughout his career. And the one before the Diego Sanchez one was against Carlos Condit, which is in 2018 on December 29th. And he won that by Kimura submission. So like I said, that's something that we got to watch out for in this fight against Magny. Is he going to be able to take him to the ground and hit him with those submissions, or keep him down and throw up those attempts? Because I think that's one of the main ways that we could see Chiesa winning against Magny. Is just constantly going for those takedown attempts and constantly going for submissions and just working. Because in his last fights, we haven't seen that much of his ground and pound, but more of his jiu-jitsu skills. And then before that, he had a loss against Anthony Pettis in 2018, where he got submitted by a triangle choke. And then we had that grudge match, if you all remember, on June 25th, 2017, where Kevin Lee got a rear naked choke on Michael Chiesa. Now, that was a grudge match where we saw emotions fly. I mean, we saw that press conference fight where both of them went at each other. And I think Kevin Lee or Michael Chiesa were talking about their mom, and it got very personal. It was a tough one to watch. But it showed us what Michael Chiesa is like when all the emotions are riled up. He was still pretty calm in the fight, but he was able to take on the pressure. Now, I know he lost, but it still shows us one of his character traits, which I think is important. Obviously, going into this Magny fight, we haven't seen much or any information from Chiesa. We've seen a couple of interviews, but he's still being very respectful. So let's take a look at Neil Magny's record and his age. So he's 33 years old, which is the same age as Michael Chiesa, which I thought was really interesting because, in my opinion, and this might just be me, but you guys can let me know, but it feels like Neil Magny has been in the game a lot longer than Michael Chiesa. Now, even though they're the same age, Neil Magny has won 24 times and lost 7. And he's ranked number 9. So his last fight, Neil Magny's, was against Robbie Lawler on August 29th, 2020, where he won a unanimous decision win. Neil Magny's one trait, which we'll talk about more later on, is going to be the volume of strikes, the pace that he can keep up. Neil Magny with that amazing frame for this division. Having those long arms and pumping that jab is going to be really key in victory for this fight. This is going to be a really important factor that he needs to involve, which is the action, which is the volume, never letting his foot off the gas. So the one before that was against Anthony, which was June 6th, 2020, decision win, unanimous. Then interesting one that I wanted to point out was a win against Lee on March 7th, 2020, which is a decision win unanimously. We just saw Lee get an amazing knockout on Ponzinibbio. So was this fight more of Lee was on the downswing and coming back up? Because a lot of other reporters and a lot of other podcasts have been talking about Lee's, he's not that consistent. We see something amazing in one fight, and then the next fight, it looks like a totally different fighter. So was it the inconsistency, or was it Neil Magny's experience and volume? Another point when it comes to the volume, he's constantly moving. He's constantly switching angles and really pumping that jab, like I said. But he also has the wrestling ability. He has the ability to ward off takedown defenses and to even hit with some offensive wrestling. So then we saw the fight where Magny lost against Ponzinibbio November 17th, 2018 by KO TKO. Now in that fight, this is when Ponzinibbio was at that point in his career where we really thought that he was someone that could fight for that belt and win it. Now, recently we saw it might be due to ring rust. It might be just due to lingering injuries on Ponzinibbio's half. But he didn't look like the same fighter he was. Now, the fight was relatively quick against Lee. But at that time, when Magny fought Ponzinibbio, we thought that we were dealing with a different animal. So then we saw the fight against Craig White on May 27th, 2018, which ended by knees and punches. Now, this fight was interesting because it goes exactly to the point that I've been kind of harping on in this podcast, is the volume. The volume is what's going to win for Magny in the striking department. Because Chiesa is also going to win by volume as well. But it's going to be in the takedowns, the amount of takedowns, the chain wrestling that's going to be involved, and the submission attempts. If he's not going to evolve his game on Chiesa's half by adding the ground and pound and by adding all that kind of hard-hitting stuff. So it's going to be volume on both ends, but it's in different categories. So next, just some notes about this fight. Just going through my notes, just like I said, submission is going to be really important for Chiesa. It looks like it's going to be either a decision win by either one of them or by some sort of submission. I don't see a knockout happening in this fight. I don't see anybody just, anything can happen, right? But I think that it's going to have to involve some sort of decision win or submission. Now, another thing that we need to take into account when we look at this fight, but this fight was going to be headlined by Leon Edwards and Khamzat Chimaev. They were the main event, but Khamzat got COVID and they had to bump these guys up. By the way, I'm still super sad that we didn't get that fight. We're going to get it later on. But how will the bump to become the main headliner, how will that change up these fighters' mentality? I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, but I think it's a thing that we need to take into account. I think it's something that we just need to look at from a psychological point of view that might be interesting. And it's really great to see these two guys headline a card as well. So, but lastly, let's talk about the implications of this fight. Now, like I said, I don't think these two are going to fight for that 170 belt after this win. But it will show us if these two are able, if one of them is able to be in that top 5, if one of them is able to make a real run at the belt. Now, could you see one of these fighting Usman or Burns, whoever wins that fight, after this? I don't know. I think I got to see a couple more fights, obviously, because there's some real deserving people for that chance. I think he's got one of these guys has got to fight one of those. So no title implication, but it's still a really important fight, and it couldn't happen to two more really nice guys that have been in the sport for a while. Chiesa is doing some really great things on commentary and doing a lot of great work. And we all know that Neil Magny is one of the nicest people in the UFC. I feel like I say that about every single UFC fighter, but that's just how our sport is. We got some great characters. We got some great fighters in here. And these two fighting on Wednesday to get us amped up for that amazing Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier card is the perfect way to kick off this week. So if you guys could like, subscribe, hit that bell notification on YouTube. And if you can give 5 stars or anything on the different podcast platforms, that'd be really appreciated. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for listening to this podcast. My name is Naz, and this has been the Body Punch Podcast. Bye.